recently made a video about how narcissists are made and not born. And first of all, I still stand behind that video. But I wanted to add a few things because I never thought it would be so controversial. Health is not an exact science. We do the best we can with what we know. There are many, many layers. However, the consensus is that a narcissist is mostly created. Now, when I say created, it can be a combination of many different things. So first of all, there's a difference between narcissistic personality disorder, which is a clinical term and a diagnosis, and having narcissistic traits. And I am talking about narcissism. In all of my videos, I am talking about somebody who presents or behaves in narcissistic ways, exhibiting narcissistic traits. These are just things we can see. These are things that are made obvious through their behaviors. This is not a diagnosis. The person has not been assessed in any way. Usually I'm talking about someone I've never met because I don't work with narcissists. My expertise is in narcissistic abuse. So I work with the victims of narcissists. I have many people that I work with who might have grown up in a family where it was abusive and they have a sibling who turned out to be a narcissist. However, they did not. So when I mentioned in the early video that these things are what can contribute or create a narcissist, it doesn't mean everybody in that family is going to instantly become a narcissist. There are so many other factors that have to come into play. Basically, from the moment you're born, if your needs are not attended to, this is called an insecure attachment. So a baby has certain needs. These are not wants, these are needs in order to survive. They not only need to be fed and clothed and kept warm and kept dry, but they need to be touched. They need to be bonded with to thrive. They cries, they need to be comforted, because every time a baby is comforted or taken care of, their needs are taken care of, they learn the world is a safe place and they can depend on others to be there for them. What happens is, if the baby's needs are not attended to, and again, not saying that every once in a while the baby's not picked up, I'm talking about consistency. If a baby is inconsistently looked after, so either sometimes their needs are met, sometimes they're not, they never know, they can grow up with something called disorganized attachment. For further information, I did a video a while back about attachment, which explains this. I'm just giving a quick overview. If the baby is consistently just not attended to at all, they learn the world is not safe and they only have themselves. So they're relying on them. So then they can grow up and they can become, I guess, what we would consider selfish. They can act out, be disruptive. They can also withdraw, and they can also, so again, this isn't like they're going to suddenly become a narcissist because of this. However, some might become narcissists, and this can be mistaken for being born as one. So if no obvious abuse took place in the family, maybe the parent was going through, and again, we're not parent blaming here, maybe the parent was going through a really bad time, maybe they had depression, maybe they were overwhelmed. So again, we're not blaming the parent. Most parents try to do the best they can. However, that doesn't undo the fact that that baby at that time did not get what they needed. And so there is where sometimes that can develop into narcissism. Usually that will be a milder form of narcissism because narcissism is on a spectrum. So some, what we would call run-of-the-mill narcissism, we confuse with just kind of being selfish. So being selfish doesn't necessarily make you a narcissist. Some people are just a little more selfish. They maybe put their needs first. The key to being a true narcissist is the lack of empathy. That's the distinction, and that's what a lot of people don't understand about narcissism. They think that people walking around taking selfies or just not being super giving people makes them a narcissist. And yeah, maybe a low level one, but that doesn't necessarily make them ultimately harmful or abusive. It just means they're a little more on the selfish side. And sometimes, again, that can be a bit of wiring, but that's not full blown narcissism. Narcissism means really just truly lack of empathy, always putting yourself first, and it's a lot of those other traits. What I wanted to go over is the difference between psychopathy or sociopathy. The clinical term is antisocial personality disorder and narcissism. They are not the same thing. Again, it's on a spectrum. Can a psychopath also be a narcissist? Yes, that can happen. However, there is a difference between antisocial personality disorder, and there is a lot of science to back up the fact that people that, we'll just call them psychopaths, are born that way. That is, I think, where a lot of confusion gets in, that people that have antisocial personality disorder are mostly born with that. They are missing the conscious part of the brain does not light up. That can show up in some brain scans. They don't have a conscience. They have zero empathy. They are flat. They don't really show any emotion except they can show rage. A narcissist, yes, do they lack empathy? Absolutely. But in specific circumstances, they can care at times. They do show a range of emotions. So it's a very different thing. And this is where a lot of the confusion comes in. And again, I have a great video that I put out recently about the difference between psychopath and narcissist. So I highly suggest you watch that one. And again, as I mentioned before, it's on a spectrum. And I think this is the point. This is where I want to summarize this. There's always going to be exceptions. Someone could grow up in a family where the parents were loving, were kind, were amazing, and they still have narcissistic traits. That being said, I did put out, I think, a shorter video where I mentioned that in a lot of cases, there can be unseen abuse. So there might be another adult in their life who has influenced them in a negative way. And so if that person is already sort of a little bit wired towards, I guess we'll call selfishness, that could push them a little more over the edge. So it's very complex. There's no black and white. There's no easy answers. However, the general consensus, and whether it's anecdotal, whether it's research, whether it's people experiences, is most narcissists are created.